Introduction. When people think about nursing homes, they often imagine a safe place where elderly men and women are cared for with love, dignity, and comfort. Families believe that moving their loved one into a nursing home will bring peace of mind. After all, the staff is trained, the facilities are set up for medical care, and the elderly are surrounded by others their own age. On the surface, it seems like a perfect solution. But behind that clean image, there are things that most people never talk about. I know this because I lived through it. I moved into a nursing home thinking it would be a place where I could feel safe, less lonely, and well looked after. But what I discovered was very different. I do not say these things to scare anyone, but to share the truth. These truths are not often spoken out loud because families feel guilty and nursing homes want to protect their reputation. But I want you to know what it is really like so you can make informed choices for yourself or for someone you love. Life in a nursing home is not all bad. Some people are happy, some are treated well, and some find a sense of community. But many others, like me, face challenges that no one warned us about. And once you are inside, it is not always easy to change things. In this script, I will share 6 truths about nursing homes. These are not things I read in books or heard from others. These are things I saw, felt, and lived through. My hope is that by sharing, I can give you wisdom that will help you avoid some of the pain I experienced. So, let us begin with the first truth. Truth 1. You lose your independence more than you expect. When I first moved into the nursing home, I thought I would still have some control over my daily life. I imagined I could choose when to wake up, when to eat, and how to spend my day. I thought my room would be my little private world where I could live the way I wanted. But that is not how it works. The moment you enter a nursing home, you enter into a system. Everything runs on a schedule. Meals are served at certain times. Medicine is given at set hours. Activities are planned for group. And lights are turned off at night, whether you are ready to sleep or not. At first, I told myself it was just for convenience. But soon I realized that my independence was slipping away faster than I ever imagined. One morning, I woke up earlier than usual. I wanted a cup of tea, the way I always used to have at home. But when I asked, the staff said, "Breakfast is at 8, we will serve tea then." That may sound small, but to me, it was a reminder that I could no longer decide even the simplest things for myself. I had to live according to their rules, not mine. In a nursing home, independence is slowly replaced with routine. You do not drive anymore. You do not cook your own meals. You do not decide when to go outside. Even small things like choosing what clothes to wear become limited, because laundry is managed in bulk. I remember wearing a sweater that was not mine, because the laundry had mixed things up. When I complained, the staff said, "It is warm and clean. That is what matters." To them, it was small. To me, it was another piece of my identity being taken away. The hardest part is that you cannot easily push back. If you argue too much, you are labeled difficult. Staff may avoid you or treat you with less patience. You start to feel like a child again, always asking permission. I never thought I would feel like a burden just for wanting to live my life my way. But that is exactly what happened. For elderly people who once lived independently, this loss of control can be crushing. At home, even with help, you have choices. You can open your own fridge, sit on your porch when you want, or watch TV until midnight. In the nursing home, your freedom is exchanged for structure. Some people accept it quickly. Others, like me, feel trapped. I remember sitting in the common room one afternoon. Around me, men and women sat quietly in their chairs. Some were dozing, some staring at the television. I thought about how every day looked the same. Breakfast, medicine, sitting lunch, sitting dinner, bedtime. Life became a cycle, not a choice. I whispered to myself, is this all that is left for me? That question haunted me for months. If you are considering a nursing home, you must understand this truth. Independence will not be the same. You will be cared for, but you will also be controlled by the system. And if you value your freedom deeply, this loss will weigh heavy on your heart. Truth, too, loneliness does not go away, even when you are surrounded by people. Before I moved into the nursing home, I thought one of the best things about it would be the company. At home, I was often alone. My children visited when they could, but they had their own busy lives. Neighbors stopped by sometimes, but not often enough. I told myself, at least in a nursing home, I won't be lonely. There will be people all around me. That was my hope. But the reality turned out very different. Yes, there are people everywhere in a nursing home. You eat in a dining hall with dozens of others. You sit in common rooms where residents gather. You see nurses and staff walking through the hallways. From the outside, it looks like a place full of life. But loneliness in a nursing home is unlike any loneliness I ever felt before. Here's why. Most of the people around you are strangers, and many are living with serious illnesses. Some cannot talk much. Some are lost in their own world because of dementia. Others are too tired, too sick, or too withdrawn to make conversation. When I first arrived, I tried to make friends. I sat at a table with two other women during meals. One rarely spoke. The other repeated the same stories again and again because she could not remember yesterday. I nodded and smiled, but inside I longed for a real conversation, the kind of talk that makes you feel alive. You also realize that many residents are not interested in building new relationships. At a certain age, people are tired. They have lost so many friends and family already. Some simply wait quietly for the days to pass. I remember asking one man if he wanted to play cards. He looked at me with empty eyes and said, "What's the point?" That answer broke me in ways I cannot explain. The truth is, you can be surrounded by people but still feel invisible. Staff members are busy. They are kind sometimes, but they are there to work, not to be your friends. They move quickly from one resident to another, handing out medicine, checking vitals, changing bedding. Their smiles are polite, not personal. After a while, you stop expecting warmth from them. Family visits are rare too. At the start, your children or grandchildren may come often, trying to comfort you and themselves. But as the weeks turn into months, the visits slow down. Life outside keeps moving while your world stands still. When my daughter used to call and say, "Sorry, Mom, we'll come next week," I would smile and say, "That's fine, dear." But after the call, I would sit in my chair and cry quietly because next week often turned into next month. Loneliness in a nursing home is not about being physically alone. It is about feeling disconnected from the life you once knew. It is about sitting in a crowded dining hall, yet feeling that no one truly sees you. It is about watching the clock tick slowly, waiting for a knock on the door that sometimes never comes. I remember one winter holiday in particular. The halls were decorated with paper snowflakes. The staff put on music and handed out cookies. Families came to visit many of the residents. My room, however, stayed quiet. My son was out of town, and my daughter's children were sick. I sat by the window, watching the snowfall outside. Laughter echoed from the common room, but none of it reached me. That was the loneliest Christmas of my life. The cruel part is that loneliness in a nursing home can feel worse than at home. At home, at least you're in your own familiar space, surrounded by memories and things that matter to you. In the nursing home, you are in a room that is not yours, with people who are not your family, and a schedule that is not your choice. The loneliness cuts deeper because it feels like you do not belong anywhere anymore. Some nursing homes try to fight loneliness with activities, bingo, crafts, exercise classes. But these are often shallow distractions. You sit in a circle, half the people half asleep, while someone calls out numbers or plays music. It fills the time, but it rarely fills the heart. I joined a few activities at first, but soon I stopped. It felt like I would pretend to be cheerful when inside I was empty. What no one tells you is that loneliness in a nursing home is not solved by being around people. It is solved by connection, and that is the one thing most nursing homes cannot give. Connection comes from love, from family, from friendship, from someone who knows you deeply. Without that, you are just another name on the chart, another bed in a row of beds. I often thought about my life before. I thought about sitting in my old chair at home, sipping tea, looking out at my garden. Yes, I was alone then too, but it was a different kind of alone. It was peaceful, familiar, and mine. In the nursing home, the loneliness felt forced, heavy, and endless. If you are thinking of a nursing home for yourself or for someone you love, you must know this truth. Company does not mean connection. Do not assume that moving into a place full of people will take away the loneliness. In many ways, it can make the loneliness sharper. Truth 3. The quality of care depends on staff and money, not just promises. When families visit a nursing home for the first time, they often see the best version of the place. The floors are polished, the walls are decorated, the staff is smiling, and the rooms look tidy. Administrators talk warmly about the activities and the medical support available. Everything looks safe, professional, and caring. Families leave with a sense of relief, thinking, yes, this will be good for Mom. She will be in safe hands. That is what my children thought when they helped me move into the nursing home. But soon, I learned the hard truth. What you see during the tour is not always what you live through day by day. The real quality of care inside a nursing home depends on two things above all: the number of staff and the money available. The staff shortage is the first problem. Nursing homes are often understaffed. There are not enough nurses and aides to give personal, patient care to every resident. When one aide is responsible for 10 or more people at once, corners are cut, tasks are rushed, smiles turn into frowns of exhaustion. It is not that the staff are bad people. Many of them are kind and hardworking, but they are stretched too thin. And when you are old, frail, and dependent, that shortage hits you hard. I remember waiting for almost an hour one night, just for someone to help me to the bathroom. I pressed the call button. I waited. The minutes felt like hours. By the time someone arrived, I was embarrassed and angry. The aide apologized and said, "I'm sorry, I had 3 other people before you." That was not her fault. it was the system's fault. But my dignity was lost in the process. There were mornings when breakfast trays arrived late, already cold. There were evenings when medicine was delivered later than scheduled. Sometimes laundry went missing for days. All of this happened because there simply were not enough hands to do the work properly. And when you depend on others for your basic needs, those delays make you feel helpless. The second problem is money. Nursing homes are businesses. They run on budgets, and money decides what kind of care residents receive. A facility with higher fees may have better staff-to-patient ratios, fresher food, and cleaner surroundings. But not everyone can afford the expensive places. Families often choose what fits within their means, not realizing that cheaper homes often cut corners. I was in a mid-range nursing home. It was not the worst, but not the best either. The food was plain, repetitive, and often not suited to my taste. It's healthy, the staff would say, but healthy is not the same as nourishing to the spirit. Eating bland food day after day felt like another small punishment. The rooms were serviceable but not warm. And when equipment broke down like a heater or a wheelchair, it sometimes took weeks to be fixed because budgets were tight. I also noticed how the quality of care could shift depending on who was on duty. Some aides went above and beyond. They spoke kindly, took their time, and made you feel like a human being. Others did the bare minimum, rushing through tasks without looking you in the eye. Families might never see the difference, because when visitors arrive, staff usually put on their best faces. But once the visitors leave, the reality returns. One of the hardest moments for me was when I had a fall in my room. I pressed a button, but it took nearly 20 minutes for someone to arrive. By then, I was already shaken and sore. The aide who came seemed hurried and overwhelmed. She kept saying, "We're short tonight. I'm doing the best I can." I believed her, but it did not make the pain or fear go away. In that moment, I realized how fragile my safety really was. The truth about nursing homes is that promises and brochures do not tell the whole story. The level of care you or your loved one receives depends largely on staffing numbers and financial resources. A beautiful building cannot replace enough caring hands. A warm smile during a tour cannot replace consistent attention at 2 a.m. when you are scared and in pain. Families sometimes assume that once their parent is in a nursing home, everything is taken care of. But the reality is different. Unless family members stay involved, visiting often, asking questions, watching closely, standards can slip. I saw residents who never had visitors. Their clothes were often mismatched, their hair uncombed, their nails untrimmed. They were not neglected out of cruelty, but out of shortage. When no one checked on them, the system let them slide through the cracks. I often thought about how unfair it was. After a lifetime of working, raising families, paying taxes, and contributing to society, many elderly people end up in places where their care depends not on their worth as human beings, but on budgets and staffing charts. That realization filled me with both sadness and anger. If you are considering a nursing home, you must understand this. Not all homes are equal, and the quality of care can change from day to day. Do not be fooled by appearances. Ask hard questions. How many aide per resident? What is the turnover rate of staff? How quickly do they respond to call buttons? How do they handle emergencies? Most importantly, do not disappear once your loved one is admitted. Most importantly, do not disappear once your loved one is admitted. Families who visit often usually see better care given. Not because the staff is bad, but because they're reminded that someone is watching, someone cares, someone will ask questions if things go wrong. Presence makes a difference. The harsh truth is simple. The quality of life in a nursing home is shaped less by promises and more by staffing levels and money. And if either of those runs short, residents pay the price with their comfort, safety, and dignity. Truth 4. Your identity slowly fades away. One of the hardest things about living in a nursing home is not just the loss of independence or the loneliness. It is the slow fading of who you are as a person. Little by little, your identity slips away until you begin to feel like just another resident, another bed, another name on the list. When I first arrived, I thought I would still be me. I had lived a long life filled with stories, memories, hobbies, and values. I was a mother, a worker, a neighbor, a friend. I had favorite foods, songs I loved, books I enjoyed, and a way of doing things that made me feel like myself. But as the weeks turned into months, I began to realize that much of that identity was being stripped away. The first part of it is the uniformity of life in a nursing home. Everyone follows the same schedule, eats the same food, sits in the same chairs, and participates in the same activities. It does not matter who you were outside, a teacher, a soldier, a baker, an artist. Inside the home, you are simply another resident. The uniqueness of your past begins to fade, because the present is all the same. I often thought about how strange it was that someone who once led hundreds of people or created beautiful things now spent their days playing bingo or waiting for dinner. The second part is how personal belongings are reduced. When you move into a nursing home, you cannot bring your whole life with you. There is no room for all your furniture, photo albums, or collections. You bring a few clothes, some pictures for the wall, maybe a favorite blanket or chair if you were lucky. But most of what made your home yours gets left behind. And as those objects disappear, so does part of your identity. I used to have a small library of books at home. Reading was one of my greatest joys. But in the nursing home, there was no space for more than a handful. My shelf became empty, and so did a piece of me. Another way your identity fades is in how staff and others see you. You are not called by your achievements or your roles in life. You are not Mr. Johnson, the carpenter who built half the neighborhood's houses, or Mrs. Lee, the loving grandmother who baked the best pies. You are just room 14 or the lady with the walker or the diabetic patient. I cannot count how many times I heard staff refer to residents not by name, but by their condition, the stroke patient, the dementia case, the one in the wheelchair. It may sound harmless to them, but to us, it is dehumanizing. We are not our illnesses. We are not our room numbers. But in that environment, that is how we are seen. I remember one day when my granddaughter came to visit. She asked me to tell her a story about when I was young. As I spoke, her eyes lit up with wonder. It reminded me of who I used to be, a storyteller, a person with history, someone with wisdom to share. But after she left, I sat in silence and realized that no one in the nursing home knew or cared about those stories. To them, I was just another elderly woman to care for. That realization cut deep. Truth 5. Family bonds often weaken with time. When families first decide to move an elderly parent or loved one into a nursing home, there are promises. They say, "We'll visit often." They say, "This doesn't change anything. You're still part of our lives." And they mean it. Their hearts are genuine at that moment. The first few weeks usually prove it true. Children and grandchildren stop by, bring flowers, bring small gifts, and sit for a while. There are hugs, tears, reassurances. Everyone feels guilty, so they try to ease the pain with attention. But then life happens. As weeks turn into months, visits become fewer and shorter. Phone calls are missed, then forgotten. Special days are remembered, but ordinary days are not. The busy rhythm of work, school, and family life outside the nursing home continues, while the life inside the nursing home stays still. And slowly, almost without anyone noticing, the bond between family and the resident begins to weaken. I lived through this in my own family. At first, my daughter came 3 times a week. She would bring my favorite biscuits, brush my hair, and tell me about the children. My son would call every evening just to check in. I felt loved. I felt connected. I thought, maybe this won't be so bad. But slowly, the pattern changed. My daughter's visits dropped to once a week, then once every 2 weeks. She always had reasons. The children's exams, work deadlines, family trips. They were real reasons, but they left me alone just the same. My son began calling every few days, then once a week, then only when he remembered. "Sorry, Mom, life's been hectic," he would say, and I would reply, "Of course, dear, I understand." I always try to sound supportive, but inside, my heart sank a little each time. What families often do not realize is that for the person in the nursing home, time moves differently. Days are long, slow, and repetitive. A week without a visit feels like a month. A month without one feels like a year. When you are healthy and busy outside, a week can vanish quickly. But when you are sitting in a chair staring at the same 4 walls, every day stretches endlessly. That difference in time makes the absence of family feel even heavier. Truth 6. Many quietly regret the move. This is the hardest truth of all to admit. Many people in nursing homes, perhaps more than anyone realizes, quietly regret moving in. They may not always say it out loud because they don't want to hurt their families or because they believe it's too late to change anything. But in the silence of their rooms, in the long nights when sleep won't come, regret whispers loudly. I felt it myself. When I first entered the nursing home, I told myself it was a sensible choice. I needed help. My children were busy. At least here I would be safe. That was the story I told them, and it was partly true. But deep inside, I longed to stay in my own home, in my own chair, surrounded by my own things. I longed for the small freedoms that made life feel like mine. As time passed, regret grew heavier. Every time I waited too long for help, I regretted not fighting harder to stay home with assistance. Every time I ate food I didn't enjoy, I regretted not cooking my own meals for just a little longer. Every time I felt lonely in a crowd of strangers, I regretted leaving the familiar silence of my house. I was not the only one. I heard it whispered among residents. One woman said softly to me one afternoon, "I should never have left my apartment. I was fine with a little help, but my daughter thought this would be better." Another man shook his head and muttered, "This isn't living. This is waiting." These were not complaints shouted loudly. They were confessions spoken in hushed tones, with eyes lowered. Because once you are inside, you do not want to upset your family or be seen as ungrateful. So you keep the regret inside, where it eats away quietly at your spirit.